The second largest city in the world faces a highly uncertain future. A number of environmental catastrophes have been covertly unfolding for decades, yet received only minimal intervention by authorities. However, a reckoning has arrived.
Floods reached up to 3 meters.
It's called the world's dirtiest river.
The megacity's toxic air.
The land is sinking by about 25 centimeters a year.
To escape these challenges, the national government of the planet's fourth most populous country is taking an unprecedented step. It's moving away to a brand new capital on an entirely different island. Yet most of the 34 million people who live in this megacity have nowhere else to go. As islanders, they're used to coexisting with water. But to thrive under these conditions, they have to adopt the best practices in sustainable coastal living by following the example of their most forward-thinking neighbors. This is Jakarta, the inundated megacity. The current capital of Indonesia sits on a low-lying delta where 13 rivers spill into the northwest coast of Java, the country's most populous island of the more than 17,000 that make up the archipelago. Today, Jakarta is one of Earth's great melting pots, where the country's more than 1,300 ethnic groups come together.
Indonesia, we are very, very diverse, because even before Islam came, the locals, they have their own traditions, they have their own culture. They say that if you really want to know and try every single dish in Indonesia, you have to live here for 40 years.
40 years.
Then you need to stay there for a long time.
As the hub for manufacturing, business, and finance, Jakarta is the brain of a country with the largest economy in Southeast Asia. Traditionally, its leading exports are commodities like coal briquettes, palm oil, and fossil fuels. But its labor force is quickly shifting from agriculture to services, a key sign of advancement. A natural paradise with the second longest coastline in the world at over 99,000 kilometers, Indonesia's beaches draw millions of tourists, while its lush ecology makes it a vital carbon sink, as it's home to the world's largest tropical peatlands and mangrove forests. For a coastal city to succeed in this waterlogged ecosystem, certain areas must strategically remain undeveloped, to serve as flexible green spaces that can turn blue, flooding during storms to keep the rest of the city dry. Unfortunately, sustained, competent city planning has not been a strong suit of modern Jakarta.
I'm really struggling to see an area of green space that's bigger than a football field. That's rapid urbanization gone horribly, horribly wrong.
In 1619, the Dutch took control of the area, originally called Sunda Kelapa, and established a trading post. They renamed it Batavia and made it the base of operations of the Dutch East India Company. Then engineered a series of canals in the traditional Dutch style that effectively segregated native people from European neighborhoods. However, infectious diseases that were unfamiliar to the northern Europeans, but endemic to the tropics, soon spread through the increasingly contaminated waterways. The Dutch retreated inland, leaving the Javanese to occupy the polluted establishments near the shoreline. After gaining independence in the late 1940s, Indonesians took control of planning in Jakarta. Unfortunately, their most impactful leader has been Suharto, a strongman backed by the US government. After riding a sudden, overwhelming wave of violence to power, Suharto led a highly corrupt regime that encouraged rampant, speculative real estate development. This build first, figure the rest out later approach initially drove economic growth and some modernization. But his government quickly fell behind in its ability to provide public services. Today, this failure affects every Jakartan. For example, fewer than 1 million households here have access to piped water.
Meaning many people have drilled wells into the aquifers beneath the city to get their own access. Rainfall can't seep in and replenish those aquifers because Jakarta is covered in concrete. So, as the water table depletes, the clay above it becomes more compact and the city sinks lower and lower.
This is called subsidence, and it alarmingly now occurs 3 times faster than it did just a few years ago. To measure it, long poles are buried deep into the solid bedrock to gauge how the soft land above compresses over time. The sheer weight of decades of unconstrained construction causes the soft sediment to compress even faster. These cumulative effects mean that 40% of Jakarta is now below sea level. When the rainy season arrives and the rivers fill up, Jakarta increasingly suffers severe flooding.
In the early hours of January 1st, 2020, a sudden heavy downpour struck Jakarta. The intense rainfall inundated large swaths of the city and the surrounding areas, turning Jakarta into a city underwater. It was the heaviest rainfall in a single day in the capital in 24 years.
The low-lying areas of Jakarta are at the mercy of unreliable pumping stations.
Batas pintu ini kan? Ini kan? Iya, batasnya ya. Ini berarti kerendam dan mati pompa. 175 lah dari bibir ini ke atas. Air, ketinggian air. Dan ketika air sudah setinggi itu pompa mati otomatis sudah mati. Pokoknya kita ini mau apa, Pak? Kalau udah air melintasi tembok ini, kita udah off semua.
Without nearly enough waste treatment plants, the water everyone is having to wade through is laced with toxins and disease-causing microbes.
Wibowo runs a metal workshop in the village of Kapuk on the edge of North Jakarta.
Kita selalu mengalami banjir yang setiap tahun pasti lebih tinggi daripada tahun sebelumnya.
Over the years, Wibowo and his family have raised their home a number of times to try and escape the effects of flooding.
Saya harus meninggikan tempat ini. Berarti posisi saya ada di sini. Kalau saya berdiri, kira-kira 1,5 meter lebih. Saya harus meninggikan dasar lantai saya.
The problem is most acute along concrete-lined portions of the rivers that prevent aquifer recharge, fill up with silt and trash, and then quickly overflow during storms. In a recent piece by Watchdog, historian J.J. Rizal explained the problems with channelizing Jakarta's precious rivers.
Peradaban paling tua pertama orang Jakarta itu justru di sungai. Semua penemuan arkeologis yang menandakan kehidupan pertama manusia itu semua di daerah aliran Ciliwung. Karena air itu berkah, dia harus diambil, harus dipanen, harus disimpan. Pikirannya dirusak oleh Belanda. Pikiran mereka apa? Air itu harus dibuang ke laut, dikanalisasi. Jadi kalau ada yang sekarang ngomong sistem kanal itu akan membuat berhasil, orang Belanda aja tuh belajar, mereka itu gagal bikin kota Batavia. Dan Batavia harus pindah, dan yang dibentuk kotanya menyerupai kota Amsterdam dengan banyak kanal-kanal. Kanal-kanal itu dari mana? Dari Ciliwung. Ciliwung diluruskan, dibeton, diminta orang-orang Cina kerja. Tapi mulai terjadinya pendangkalan. So jadi bukan hanya kanal itu gagal, kanal itu membunuh.
Tragically, this was somehow overlooked, and building in the floodplains was turbocharged in the aftermath of the Asian financial crisis in the late 1990s. To prevent homelessness, unemployment, and further unrest, overwhelmed authorities allowed unregulated housing villages, or kampungs as they're known locally, to proliferate throughout Jakarta. Now the city faces the unenviable challenge of clawing back these spaces along the rivers and coastlines, village by village, to widen and naturalize them. These policies have been met with stiff resistance. It's also unclear sometimes who actually owns these formerly abandoned pieces of land.
Kita di sini kan kalau dibilang ilegal, gimana nggak ilegal? Bayar listrik ada, bayar PBB ada. Iya kan ngomongin dia itu. Iya kan, PAM ada. Penghuni liar.
Penghuni liar dari mana? Nggak mungkin mengurus sertifikat tanahnya 4x5.
Ah, pemilu aja ikut kita. Mana mungkin dicatat di kelurahan. Dalam pemilihan kita diikut sertakan. Tapi mau digusur penduduk liar.
Standard procedure is for the state to place evictees in new apartments somewhat close to their kampungs, but they're sometimes forcibly moved up to 25 kilometers away from their communities, offered just 3 months free rent and little, if any, help finding a job.
Kalau di sana kan nggak ibu-ibu ya, ada yang ya banyak job-job lah, yang bungkusin apa itu yang mainan. Nah itu pun dapat duit. Di sini mana nggak ada mas.
Kalau rusun itu bisa seumur hidup walaupun kecil sampai 7 keturunan, mungkin kita masih no problem walaupun jauh ya. Tapi kan ini kita bayar 3 bulan gratis 3 bulan. Setelah 3 bulan kita bayar, usaha di mana?
For people unaccustomed to life in the formal economy, this displacement can become quickly overwhelming. The other half of Jakarta's inundation crisis is the rising sea. Walls erected to somehow hold it back already show signs of failure, partly because the walls themselves are sinking unevenly. This is how things look on sunny, calm days.
The tide is high at the moment and has flooded this entire street, and it's stretching 100 meters up that way and round the corner.
With the city sinking below sea level, it's become extremely vulnerable to storm surges.
In an effort to avert a total catastrophe of a permanently flooded capital, the government is touting 2 major projects. The first is to finish the miles of seawalls planned to hold the water back. The second is 32 kilometers of artificial islands in the shape of Indonesia's national symbol, an eagle-like bird called a Garuda. Designed by a firm in the Netherlands, the world's leaders in seawall construction, the $30+ billion megaproject aims to block the encroaching sea while also creating a freshwater lagoon to serve as an additional water source. But if this project takes the 30 years it's expected to, it'll be too late. Most of coastal Jakarta will be underwater.
Kalaupun ada berbagai upaya yang dilakukan oleh pemerintah, itunya belum signifikan ya menyelesaikan masalah seutuhnya begitu.
Other concerns, aside from more kampung evictions, include emptying the rivers into a potentially stagnant pool of water, posing environmental and public health dangers in the absence of appropriate sewage and water treatment infrastructure. The national government seems also to recognize that these are temporary fixes, so it has taken a drastic step. It is moving the capital city to Borneo, a completely different island over 1,000 kilometers away. Work broke this month on the city, a $35 billion dreamscape called Nusantara. President Joko Widodo, who's overseeing the move, has said it will have several benefits. 1, its central location improves management and representation of the country's more distant islands. 2, it fits Jokowi's goal that sees development spread to many islands and Indonesia become a leader in the global maritime trade. It will decongest some of the heavy traffic in Jakarta. And 4, the one that often goes unsaid but may be the most important, it better protects the new capital from another very real danger, volcanic eruptions, which have had historically devastating effects on Java. Both Myanmar and Brazil have moved their capitals inland to mitigate the risks of operating along the coast. Although the success of both moves is dubious and neither administration left behind a megacity on an entirely different landmass, Nusantara is being sold as a carbon-neutral eco-paradise with 75% green space that will go on a site that is currently a monocultured industrial tree farm. But many logistics still need sorting, and many questions remain. Like, why doesn't the government spend the $35 billion to make Jakarta more livable instead? How will Indonesia come up with all that money? How much did Jokowi's political backers stand to gain from land interests at the new site? What will it mean for the surrounding Borneo rainforest, one of the most important carbon stores and refuges for endangered species on the planet? And how will the capital maintain legitimate control over the second largest city in the world from 1,000 kilometers away on a different island? This captain of the only ferry service operating in the sparsely populated area where Nusantara is set to rise also has trouble seeing how Jokowi's grand vision pans out.
Sempat kaget juga pas dengar ada info begitu, IKN ada di Penajam, itu sempat kaget saya. Apakah bisa kalau ibu kota bisa pindah ke tempat yang terpencil seperti hutan seperti itu? Saya bingung juga.
Despite the government escaping to new lands, many Jakartans will stay. And why not? Its problems are tough, but they're already tackling them. What was just the world's worst traffic congestion is being alleviated by smart policy, like the world's longest bus rapid transit system and, in 2019, the opening of the first line of its brand new metro, with plans to add several more very soon.
In recent years, traffic jams in Indonesia's capital have decreased. Jakarta is no longer among the top 10 most congested cities in the world.
To slow its sinking, Jakarta can follow the plan other cities have already used.
What happens in Jakarta already happened in so many cities in the world. Tokyo is a very good example, but it was also in Shanghai, Taipei, Yokohama, Bangkok. All these cities were sinking and realized the only way to stop this and manage the city again is bring the piped water.
If the governor is able to make good on his big pledge to pipe water to all of Jakarta by 2030, officials also need to be locating and shutting down the more than 10,000 unregulated deep wells. This goes hand in hand with cleaning up Jakarta's rivers.
The Citarum River is the most polluted river in the world. In the next 7 years, we will fix everything from the upstream to the downstream.
We're several years into this plan now, and the Citarum has gotten cleaner, but there's still a lot of work to be done on it and the other dozen rivers flowing through the megacity. Dechannelization and green space efforts are also ongoing.
Jadi taman ini memang untuk membantu berbagi luapan Sungai Ciliwung, air ditahan dulu di selatan Jakarta supaya teman-teman di hilir di utara tidak menerima limpasan air lebih besar. Jadi harus menunggu kerja pompa. Untuk sementara air ditahan dulu di selatan kawasan ini.
Another tool is to create a precise map of Jakarta's undulating topography and what exactly is on it, down to the centimeter, then create and enforce regulations on building in the low-lying areas, while also sometimes adding land to higher ground when it can to keep it well above the floodline. And low-cost floating bridges that are popping up all over the world now thanks to new technology can connect everything. This is a lot, but it doesn't need to happen all at once to ultimately be successful. The future where Jakarta embraces water to become an aquatic metropolis, befitting the heart of the Indonesian archipelago. A number of Jakartans have already constructed buildings that can withstand several meters of combined flooding and subsidence.
Kemarin tingginya itu tadi ya sekitar 60 cm ya. Air semua ada di kolong rumah saya dan 2 hari hilang tuh di kolong, udah terserap ya. Itu saya nggak buang sama sekali. Gitu, kami sengaja ambil tehelnya, terus dihilangin semen-semennya, jadi emang bener-bener tanah. Jadi kalaupun banjir akan terserap airnya ke tanah gitu. Jadi emang bener-bener pengen berkawan sama air.
In shoreline kampangs that will see frequent or even permanent flooding, an alternative to mass evictions is for officials to collaborate with communities to replace their homes with structures designed to withstand constant inundation. Architect Yu Sing has proposed regulations that incorporate many of these concepts. If adopted, his city plan would make Jakarta far more water-friendly. He's also designed a clever, affordable, flood-resistant tiny house that can sit on stilts of various heights.
Kami mencoba mencari alternatif supaya membuat rumah yang bisa terjangkau buat masyarakat. Kita mencoba bertanya seberapa kecil sebetulnya cukup buat berhuni begitu ya, buat tinggal begitu. Kita mulai dengan satu model rumahnya hanya membutuhkan lahan satu ukuran parkir mobil. Ukuran parkir mobil sekitar 2,5 meter kali 5 meter.
And one of the most promising signs of Jakartans adapting came in 2015, when the city plan called for river widening along the more substantially built-up Kampung Tongkol. residents banded together to avoid mass eviction by voluntarily cutting off 5 meters from their homes. This satisfied officials, and 250 of the 300 families were able to stay.
Rumah ini tidak mepet lagi dengan sungai, tapi kita punya jarak 5 meter. 5 meter itu kita pikir cukup, karena dengan jalan 5 meter itu mobilitas warganya tetap terjaga, tetap leluasa ketika terjadi bencana asing. Dan kita masih punya jarak dengan sungai lah. Harapan ke depan, apa yang terjadi di sini itu bisa juga terjadi di kampung-kampung lain. Jadi tidak hanya terjadi di sini, bahwa kalau kampung-kampung informal, kampung-kampung kumuh itu diberi kesempatan untuk ikut terlibat mengambil keputusan, membuat usulan, dan pemerintah menyediakan ruang-ruang dialog, ruang negosiasi, itu pasti ada solusi.